Here, these differences are more apparent than real. Voters didn't tell us they were divided, that there were orange voters and blue voters. Rather, voters are of one mind, a split mind. Turning to the parties themselves for a moment, let's start with the winners, the Conservatives. When the voters went to the polls on Monday, they saw Conservative Party leader Stephen Harper as a clear choice. Canadians gave the Prime Minister permission to go full steam ahead on the economy. And more than that, they actually expected him to do that, and they expected him to do that starting today. The proposition was crystal clear. He asked for a majority to implement a moderate Conservative program and complete the economic recovery, and Canadians gave it to him. Voters bought it. As a result, his success, and he may have to be a bit careful what he asked for, because his success will be directly tied to the economy. If it tanks, if we slip into another recession, if we lose a lot of jobs, he's in for trouble. As for the surprising NDP, no one more surprised than them themselves, voters were not so much drinking Orange Crush as they were reaching for boxes of Cracker Jack. The surge had nothing to do with the NDP and everything to do with Jack Layton. His charisma, his smile, that tremendous prop, his mustache. He really is the exception to the rule. For him, it paid off to be a career politician, because when it came time to choose someone in comfort, someone that they had known for a long time, actually mattered. Now, the Liberals. The Liberals were the opposite of the Conservatives. When voters looked at the Liberals and their leader, Mr. Ignatieff, they did not see a unique selling proposition. You know, advertisers are always telling us, buy this product and you'll get this benefit. You know, smart marketers, smart advertisers don't intone, buy, buy, buy. And smart politicians don't yell, rise up, rise up, rise up. The Liberals failed to articulate a believable promise of change. They failed to articulate their reason to rise up. Now, there was more here than just the failure of Ignatieff to connect with voters. Rather, for voters, they saw absolutely no reason to vote Liberal. As a Vancouver parent said, the Liberals have spent the last 6 years out of office, and at no point have they formulated what Liberal policy is. Ignatieff told us that the Conservatives were corrupt, that Parliament had to be dissolved. But there wasn't a promise of anything different, nor a belief that he could deliver. Liberals rested on the Liberal brand and voting patterns, a futile and disastrous effort for voters who were craving change, for voters who were tired of all that had gone before. So what do we make of the Liberals today, and what does the future hold for them? Well, despite where it might seem, they are not out of the game. While the Liberals failed spectacularly in their efforts to connect with voters, they were not rejected forever by any stretch of the imagination. The Bloc. Interestingly, the Bloc suffered a slightly different but parallel problem to the Liberals. The Bloc said, look, buy our product, accept what we've got on offer, and you'll get sovereignty. And Quebec voters, many of whom who still want some, who are still interested in sovereignty, have decided that sovereignty and the sovereignty debate is not something they want at the federal level. The Bloc was only supposed to be temporary, one Montrealer said. And so the BQ promise faltered. They ran out of gas, and their numbers followed suit once the proposition was stated clearly and exclusively as relating to sovereignty. And finally, the findings themselves. First, we noted 4 key findings related to government policy. The economy. Harper has a majority mandate with a clear boundary, and that boundary is the economy. Within the bounds of the economic program on which he campaigned, the Prime Minister has been given carte blanche. And more than this, he is expected to deliver. Canadians are not feeling safe. They don't believe that the storm clouds of instability and recession have passed. And they want to ensure that the tentative success of the economy over the last 3 years will continue. They want the recovery landed. The degree to which this single issue drove voters, including right-leaning Liberals, especially in the last 2 days of the campaign, into the Conservative camp, cannot be overestimated. When it comes to the Green Party, I hate to tell them this, but they're a bit late to the party. Voters may have been obsessed with the environment a year ago, but not today. The issue simply no longer resonates. Voters have moved on. And nobody should assume that because the leader of the Greens was elected in her own riding, that means that voters are focused on the environment. It would be like saying the election of a former ambassador to Afghanistan in Ajax means that voters are focused on foreign policy. 10 years ago, we could hardly believe or imagine a day when security and national security and border security and terrorism would not be primary issues, and yet they're nowhere on the radar screen today. The same has happened to the environment. It's very important for our leaders to understand that voters do not expect, and in almost all cases, do not want an ideologically driven agenda. The Harper mandate, as we said before, is succinctly and precisely an economic one. The New Democrats have been tasked to fill a gap. But finally, there is one very interesting, very intriguing, and very surprising result to come out of this research. It turns out when pollsters told us all through the campaign that healthcare was the #1 issue, they were right. And people, from participants, from seniors, to baby boomers, to adult children who look after their parents, and all the way through, people were craving some discussion about healthcare. There is way more room on this issue than the pundits and the prognosticators and perhaps even the politicians themselves think. One fundamental change is clear. The traditional place of healthcare as the third rail of Canadian politics is over. Public funding? Yes. Accessibility? Of course. But choice? More options than have ever been considered before. Gone are the days of jingoism and the out-of-hand rejection of private delivery. Voters evince clearly a new willingness to explore solutions to what they know is a looming crisis. As one woman on our rural panel said, you can still be committed to the Canada Healthcare Act, you can still have changes. Some private services are okay. Another voter, a woman in our urban professional group, said, I could see Harper introducing measures of the two-tiered system, not in full force, but gradually introducing it. Yes. From a member of our Halifax baby boomers said, the only real options for fixing healthcare are cutting or privatization. So just as voters want answers and action on economic problems, they are looking for action and answers on the next problem, which they have decided is healthcare. And they were very disappointed with these characters that we didn't have that debate in the election just passed. They expected a greater range of options, and they're tired of not having this issue debated and discussed. There's a big lesson here for these parties.